Good afternoon, everyone. You are very welcome to the Living Well programme webinar. The panel would be delighted to receive any questions you may have. Please use the Q&A feature located at the bottom of your PC or laptop screen. If you are using an iPad, you will find this feature located at the top of your screen. Without further ado, I will now hand you over to your host, Leah Kerwin, Health Promotion and Improvement Officer. Thank you.
Hey everybody, thanks so much for attending today's webinar. My name is Leah Kerwin and I'm a Health Promotion and Improvement Officer here in DNCC. I'm absolutely delighted to welcome you to our second last webinar of our October series of webinars for staff health and wellbeing. Just to let you know, our webinars are run in conjunction with the HR department here and everybody in health and wellbeing in DNCC. I'm delighted to welcome you to our next speakers, Leah Harrington and Kathy Carroll. Leah and Kathy are going to introduce us to the Living Well programs. Leah is a Living Well coordinator of all of the Living Well programs, and Kathy is a Living Well facilitator of these programs. Both Leah and Kathy both live with chronic illnesses, so it's an absolute pleasure to have them on our webinar today. So during today's session, they're going to explain what's involved in the Living Well programs and how do you sign up, and specifically looking at people who are living with long COVID and how to manage the symptoms that you may be experiencing. So just before I hand you over to Kathy and Leah, I'd just like to remind you that we are on Twitter today, and our hashtag is #StaffHealthDNCC, and our Twitter handle is @HSE DNCC, all capital letters. And as Lauren said, we also have a Q&A feature. So if you'd like to pop in any questions for Leah and Kathy throughout their talk, pop them in there and we'll get to them at the end of the session. So without further ado, it's over to you, Kathy and Leah. Thanks, everyone.
Lovely. Thanks so much, Leah, and thank you for inviting us here today. So as Leah was saying, my name is Leah Harrington. I'm the Living Well coordinator in CH09. I'm also a facilitator on the Living Well programs, and I'm also a master trainer on all the programs that we run also. I would live with several chronic health conditions myself and with chronic pain, and that's first how I got to know these programs. I joined as a participant and I found them to be really beneficial, and it really helped me to get more control back in my life at that stage. So I loved the program so much. I went on to train then as a leader, co-facilitator of the programs, and then later on did my master training. So we're very lucky within the CH09 area, we can run this program and several other of the Living Well programs. So I hope you find today really beneficial and that you might learn one or two things. I'll hand you over to my co-facilitator there, Kathy.
Thanks, Leah. Hi, everybody. It's lovely to be here and lovely to be a part of the Health and Wellbeing Staff Month. So I'm Kathy, and I'm also a facilitator of the Living Well programs, and similar to Leah's experience, I'm living with multiple chronic health conditions, including long COVID. So that's really how I came upon the program, was initially as a participant, and I just got so much from it. It was really life-changing that I went on to train to become a facilitator in order to be able to deliver the program. So I hope you get a lot from today's session, and we'll be giving you an overview of exactly what is covered in this 6-week self-management program. So I hope you all enjoy, and don't be afraid to ask questions in the chat, and we'll do our very best to answer them at the end of the presentation.
Thanks, Kathy. So as we said, you're all extremely welcome. There's myself and Kathy, so you're all very welcome to our session today. Let's do the next slide. Thanks. So what is the Living Well program? So it's a scripted program. It's a standardized program designed to help people living with or caring for someone with long-term health conditions. They learn skills necessary to deal with the day-to-day management of living with their chronic health condition, or like with long COVID or chronic pain. Participants learn skills to manage their health better and to build confidence in managing symptoms such as fatigue, pain, shortness of breath, disability, and then depression. They are encouraged to set goals, find resources and support that may help them manage their health on a daily basis while doing the things that they need and want to do. And that's very important for people who are living with sort of different chronic health conditions, that they find that they can't do what they want to do because of their condition. And by doing this program, then we can teach different skills and different tools then to help them to get back to what they used to do. So we are licensed through the SMRC in California. Online, we'd have a group of 10 to 12 participants. In the face-to-face program, we could have up to 18 participants. So there's 2 trained facilitators, one which has to be living with a long-term health condition themselves. And for this program, being with long COVID, as Kathy said, she's living with long COVID. And I think that really helps with the program. If there is a leader living with that chronic health condition, it really sort of gives such a positive outlook about their condition as well. And if they see, say, someone like Kathy, oh, she's living with long COVID and this is what she did to get to different steps, and oh, now she's a facilitator on the program, I think it's just a really positive sort of attribute of it all, considering when you're living with a chronic health condition. So our first session is on for an hour and a half, is on for 1 hour, sort of sometimes an hour and a half, and we call that session 0. So that's really to make sure everyone can get online okay. If people are having IT problems or anything like that and they're helped on, we give a brief overview then of WebEx and what buttons to use, and we also give then a brief overview of the program, because it'd be nothing worse that if you're starting a program you didn't know how to log on, or you're having difficulties and then you're going straight into a session. It's just, your head just wouldn't be in it for the rest of it. So we find since doing this session 0, it's really helped and given confidence to people that wouldn't be used to sort of using WebEx or that. Also, you have to be over 18 to do the program, and it's also not suitable for anyone with significant intellectual impairment or with advanced dementia.
Okay, so just to give you a little bit of history about the Living Well programme and where it comes from. So the Self-Management Resource Centre in California, it's the culmination of over nearly more now than 38 years of research and programme development. And the sole focus is on helping people better manage their chronic health conditions. And this gives a really good overview again, so you can see exactly there where it comes from. So in 1978, Dr. Kate Lorig, she arrived at Stanford University to create an arthritis education program. So initially when this program was being offered, it was solely for people living with arthritis. In 1979, the Arthritis Self-Management Program was completed and the first 14 leaders were trained in order to deliver it. In 1993, the Chronic Disease Self-Management Program was developed, and the research for this program was completed in 1996. Then in 1994, in response to the HIV and AIDS crisis, the CDSMP, which is the Chronic Disease Self-Management Program, it was adapted for use in people who were HIV positive. In 1995, Dr. Sandra Lefort in St. John's, Newfoundland, she adapted the ASMP for use with people who are living with chronic pain. In 2004, the Diabetes Self-Management Program was developed. And then in 2010, the Building Better Caregivers was developed, which is a program specifically for carers. 2012, the Cancer Thriving and Surviving was developed. And in 2017, the Self-Management Resource Centre was created, and the Workplace Chronic Disease Self-Management Programme was developed. And I can't actually see the bottom of that slide. Can you see it, Leah?
Yeah, so in 2020 then COVID came along, and that pivoted us then to doing the remote delivery of all of our programmes. So this is the Living Well timeline. So as Kathy was saying, in 1978, Dr. Kate Lorig arrived in Stanford, and that's how the programs had started from there. In 2005, different organizations sent some of their staff to Stanford and to be trained as leaders. And in 2005, the first Living Well program was run in Tallaght. So in 2019, we got National Lottery funding. We also got Sláintecare funding. We were in partnership then with Trinity College, because this program is really an interactive, and it's also evidence-based, which is really important. And then in 2020, then all our programs went online. So there was a lot of work went into this delivery. A lot of people were saying, oh, I don't think this program works as well online as it would in face-to-face. We might lose a few things. And as WebEx sort of improved and we got breakout rooms, and it was actually worked out brilliantly for us running this program online. And then with Trinity College, we did research with them. And one of the research topics that came out was we had a higher retention rate on the program since it went online compared to when we're doing programs face-to-face. And I can understand that as myself, someone living with chronic pain and chronic health conditions, that if you're going to be doing a program for 2.5 hours, it could be to travel over, it could take you an hour and a half. You get there, you do your 2.5 hours, and then you have to go back home again. And it's quite a long day, especially if you are living with chronic health conditions. And I know there's 2 participants who are trying to do our program, the chronic pain one, for about 5 years. And every time the program came up, they had really bad flares, or they just weren't able to join, and they're nearly in tears when the program was online and they could actually do it from the comfort of their own home, sometimes from the bed, sometimes from the sofa. It's really, you know, what's easiest for them to do, and they were absolutely delighted then that this went online. So we're reaching a lot more people then, sort of, that might be more isolated or who might have mobility issues to get to the program. So it has been really, really positive in that sense. So then the leader training. So there are almost more than 10,000 leaders trained to date in delivering this model. The leadership training involves four full days of lectures, role playing, and delivering samples of the program to fellow leaders. And then due to COVID-19, it's now currently run online for 2.5 hours twice a week for 6 weeks. So we trained sort of 5 new leaders in April of last year, all who've facilitated a program with an experienced leader, and we also then have mentoring then in session 3. The course is very specific, and that's the beauty, is in its simplicity. The course content and delivery process must be adhered to. So good techniques that are taught on how to manage people and groups, letting people be heard without letting someone else, one other person, take over. And I think it's really important that it's done in a safe place then as well. So what is shared within the group would stay in the group as such as in like the face-to-face programs as well. So as a trained leader, you can only deliver the program under the license, and then a leader must deliver the program at least once a year. And that's really to make sure that they are up to date with the program, because a lot of things could happen since you last delivered, with updates and everything like that. And it's just to make it more consistent to have our leaders sort of delivering a program. And we have many leaders who are delivering more than one program as well. So.
Okay, so what does the Living Well program do? Well, it supports the development of practical skills in enhancing self-efficacy, improving health behaviours, improving social engagement, reducing feelings of low mood, depression and anxiety. So really, with the first 3 points in terms of the self-efficacy and health behaviours and social engagement, they're really interlinked. So the programme really supports participants in gaining that confidence in their ability and also in their motivation to do things. It may be a case of accepting that you mightn't be able to do something exactly as you were able to do before, but it's embracing the way you can do it now, and accepting that it may be different, but you can still do a huge amount of things. So it's really taking that control back and gaining confidence in the things that we can do. And looking at low mood and depression and anxiety, and I suppose it's important to say the depression we look at is really depression with a small d, as opposed to clinical depression. So those blue feelings that are very common for people that are living with chronic conditions and sometimes multiple chronic health conditions. It can be a very isolating and lonely place. So really this, as Leah mentioned, it's creating a safe space where people can talk and share, and really connecting with other people. And in this case, with the long COVID, people living with long COVID, you're in a space where everybody is living with the same condition. So people just have that understanding, and there's just a huge amount of comfort in that for people. And I suppose this slide, this really sums up what the program is about. So it's the symptom cycle and self-management tools. So we can see there on the left our symptom cycle with symptoms of poor sleep, physical limitations, pain, stress, difficult emotions, low mood and depression, shortness of breath and fatigue, and then you're back to the poor sleep. And I'm sure a lot of you that are here today can recognize some of those symptoms, maybe if not all of those symptoms. And it can be quite emotive when you see it for the first time. They aren't just words, they are real symptoms that we feel. And they don't always go round and round in that perfect circle. They can zigzag from one to the other as well, and really just get that vicious cycle going. So on the right, we have our little toolbox there, where we have all our tools. So what we do in the program is we introduce you to all of these tools. And with these tools, they can break the symptom cycle at different points. So just to give you an example, if we look at, say, physical activity in our self-management toolbox. So physical activity is different for everybody, just depending on where we're at physically. And the program embraces that. It's all about meeting your body where it's at right now. So say if somebody was to take maybe do some movement for their physical activity or a short walk, that can really break the symptom cycle at any point. So it can really then, it has a knock-on effect on other symptoms. So it can break the cycle at physical limitations, which then can help to improve our pain, can have an impact on our stress levels, can also help with our fatigue and poor sleep. And if we look at using your mind is a really powerful tool. And in the program, you're introduced to techniques like distraction, the body scan, helpful thinking, guided imagery. And that again can break that cycle at the point of pain, and then can also help with our fatigue, our stress, and emotions. And breathing techniques as well, which I find so helpful as somebody living with long COVID. That's another technique, another tool in our toolbox. And that can break that cycle at shortness of breath. But it can also help with our, those low mood or feelings or difficult emotions also. Not just for people with breathing issues, it also has a huge impact on, stress or anxiety that can come along with our chronic conditions. So really, we go through all of these tools and introduce them over the 6 weeks. And you may find ones that work really well for you now and that help to break that symptom cycle. Others, they may stay in that toolbox, but when you finish the 6-week program, you have them there. You have that toolbox that some might sit in that toolbox, for a few months, others a year, but they're there and you can take them out at different points depending on what's going on with you and what you would find most helpful in the moment. Because unfortunately, we can break that symptom cycle, but it doesn't stay unbroken. It can start, it can rebuild itself and get going again. So it's always learning that we can dip into that toolbox. And there's lots of tools there that can support us and guide us and help to break that symptom cycle. And you can see the 3 that are highlighted in red. I think Leah's going to talk a bit more about them in the next slide, but it's problem solving, decision making and action planning. They're really our core tools in the toolbox, and they really help us use all the other tools more effectively.
So we're going to take a look now at the skills we learned during the course. So we have our core skills, as Kathy mentioned, making decisions, action planning and problem solving. And I'm going to be talking more about those core skills and some of the other slides, but say problem solving is something that everyone would do from session 1 to session 6. But as I say, we'll talk a bit more in detail about that as we carry on. So other techniques are dealing with difficult emotions, pain and fatigue management, exercise and physical activity, relaxation techniques, better breathing. healthy eating and weight management, communication skills. So that would be, we'll say, with family, friends, with your healthcare providers, but also that negative self-talk that we give ourselves, and sort of really looking at that and keying into that, because that can have a huge effect on how we feel about ourselves. Then we had dealing with low mood and depression, making informed treatment decisions, local supports, and then managing medications. And it was fun, actually. We had a couple of people doing this program who were sort of living with long COVID and like dealing with those difficult emotions. A lot of people never had a health condition in their life, but they got COVID, and now all of a sudden they've long COVID. So when they were doing the programs, they weren't getting as much from the program as other participants were, because they'd have pain and fatigue issues going on. And I always remember one participant saying, well, I have pain in my chest, but I have pain then in my heart, and the pain in my heart is totally different to the pain that's in my chest. The fatigue, they were trying to talk about it. And I know one person had went through an experience of cancer, and they referred back to that fatigue that you would get from doing chemo or for doing radium, which I can totally relate to. So it was fun doing these programs, and then seeing them do one or two other programs that I talked to my line manager, Caroline, to see if we could run this program specifically for people who are living with long COVID. We had our first program, and we had some participants who had already done this program, but they said it was felt like a totally different program because there was people there who were living with long COVID, that they could see each other, they could talk, they believe in each other, and they just got so much more from that program. And during that program then as well, I would have liaised then with one of the doctors in Beaumont Hospital who was running the long COVID clinics there as well. And they just felt like the whole mood, the communications, like even as Katie was mentioning, the better breathing, that really helped them during times where they were having really bad issues with their breathing. And I just think this cohort group really benefited from each other during that program. And as I said, they didn't feel as isolated or alone either. So that's how this program came about. It's one for people who are living with all different health conditions, but then we have this same program then specifically for those who are living with long COVID. So partnership. So conversations should be between experts. So on the left side, you have the doctor who is an expert on healthcare, and then you have the patient. I'm an expert on me and my life. And sometimes we can feel that we aren't an expert, but and that our health professionals are, and that is true. But also, as you learn during the 6 weeks, you learn to get the confidence back. You live with yourself for 24 hours. You know what's happening with you, and it's really to have that voice. So when we're talking about communications with our healthcare team, this is really important. And you will learn skills on how to go to your next appointment, having the information ready, having 3 or 4 questions that you want answered at that appointment, so that you can get the very best out of that appointment, so that you come away feeling, well, actually now I know A, B, and C, and I have to do C, D, and E. So I just think it's really important to have that self-belief, even though you're living with long COVID, that you're living with a chronic health condition or chronic pain. And I know that can knock people's confidence, that actually no, you can be that confident person, and that you are an expert, and then that way your relationship with your healthcare team can improve and flourish even more than before.
Okay, so this gives you an idea of, it's a 6-week program. So the next set of slides, we're going to look at what we'll be covering in each week. So you can see here, this is week 1. So the first thing we do in week 1 is an introduction, where there's an introduction to the workshop to let everybody know what's going to be covered over the 6 weeks, but also participants introduce themselves, just saying who they are and the condition they're living with, if they're comfortable sharing, and some of the problems that arise from living with the condition. And people find that, very comforting, because we actually share it, scribe it up on a slide, and you can see I'm not alone with the problems or challenges that I am, that I'm finding in my life at the moment because of, say, long COVID. And then what we do is we look at ways like what we showed you earlier with the symptom cycle and with the toolbox. We look at what we're going to be covering together and ways of really resolving a lot of the problems that are highlighted from this. We outline the general principles of self-management and introduce everybody to that self-management toolbox that you'll become very familiar with throughout the 6 weeks. And you'll see highlighted here, we have stretch breaks and a break highlighted in red. And they're really important because we're very much aware of people's comfort. It's a safe space, but it's also important that you're comfortable and you are at home. So we would remind participants to really look after themselves. We have some participants joining from their bed, other from a comfortable chair. So the stretch breaks are very important. So people feel that they can get up and move around. They don't have to stay seated, which is a concern some people have, that they'd have to stay seated, they'd have to concentrate. We encourage people to take breaks at different times. If somebody's having, a bad day, that they could take as much as they need. We really work around the needs of the group. We look at fatigue and getting a good night's sleep. And that's something that would come up as a problem for a lot of people living with chronic conditions, similar to long COVID, that, what are the ways that we can help to improve our sleep? Also look at the mind-body connection and distraction. And this is one of the using your mind tools. And it really highlights, we do an exercise together, and it really highlights the power the mind has over the body. So just by doing a simple exercise together, and the participants receive a book, which we'll go through in a little while. There's a lot more examples in the book on that mind-body connection distraction. And then there's an introduction to action planning. Action planning you would have seen highlighted in red in our toolbox, because it really is one of our key tools in our self-management toolbox, and it's something that that we do in every session. I think we're going to go look at it in more detail in the next slide. There it is there. So action planning. And action planning, it's so powerful because it can be so difficult when you're living with a chronic health condition. It can be difficult to plan. You might have a goal in mind that just seems, I know for me, before I started this program, I'd say, oh, I'm not going to even bother getting started. There's no way I can do this. So that's the beauty of action planning. So you can see the first, that it's something for you. So that's really important. It's not something that you feel you should do, or your neighbor down the road thought would be a great idea for you to do. This is something that you would actually like to do for yourself, and that it's achievable. So that is that you can expect to be able to do it in a week's time before you're back on the screen the following week on the program. And it's action specific. So again, the more specific you are with your action plan, the more likely you are to achieve it. So just to give you an example of action specific, say, if somebody wanted to lose weight, that's not an action, but maybe, replacing junk food snacks with fruit is. So, the losing weight would be the result of your action then. Then these are the questions we would answer each week when we're making an action plan. So the what, how, much, when, and how often. And you probably think this is very detailed, and it is, and that's for a reason. The more specific somebody is with what they would like to do, the more likely they are to achieve. So we get them to be very specific in terms of what are they going to do? What time of day are they going to do? Is it going to be the morning, the afternoon? How long will they spend? And then finally a confidence level. So we'd look for a confidence level of 7 or more on that scale, where 0 is I'm not at all sure, to 10 being totally sure, because it's very important that when people set an action plan and they leave the session, that they feel confident that yes, this is something that I can do. And as it says, leaders then, or facilitators, we always start with our action plan first. So we would, just to give people a chance to think about something they'd like to do and to really highlight the steps, we will always share our action plan first. And yeah, so it's a really, really key tool. And it's one that participants, and including myself, I got so much value from it, because it really shifts the focus from what I can't to what I can by breaking it down into really small, doable and achievable steps.
So then in week 2, we'd have our feedback on our action plans. And in between that sort of first week then as well, I would ring during the week just to see how people's action plans are going. Did they need any help? Sometimes they forget, if they make an action plan and something that's cropped up and they can't do it, that they feel then, oh, I said I'd do this, but I have to do it. So action plans aren't set in stone. So if something happens that you can't do what you'd planned, you can also do then another action plan as well. And one thing then as well that action plans can do is self-care as well. That's something a lot of us can be very bad about, but actually it makes a really good action plan to do some self-care, to give yourself some time and that. And also during that feedback then, if someone was having problems that say they couldn't do all of the action plan that they wanted to do, we then introduce problem solving. So we'd write down what their action plan was and what problem did they get. Then we open it up to the rest of the group for suggestions. Then we go through the different suggestions, and then that person can pick one to try. And sometimes that one mightn't work, so they might go for the second one to try, and that's perfectly fine. So you can go through all those sort of advice and tips that we're giving, and if you still couldn't get that action plan done, or you couldn't find a way around it, sometimes it's not possible for you to do it then. So you might try that again at a later stage, you know, even after the program, or maybe try it again in week 5 or week 6. So sometimes that problem can't be solved at the here and now, and sometimes it could be from restraints outside of your control. So then we look at dealing with difficult emotions, and that's a really big one for our participants as well, because there's so much emotion comes to living with a health condition, and especially for those living with long COVID as well, because it's a brand new condition that came out, so there isn't as much research done, there isn't as much evidence done, so it's really hard to deal with. And also, where do I turn to for help? Where will I get that support? And it's okay to have those difficult emotions, and it's okay to feel those difficult emotions and as well. So then we have our break for 10 minutes, and then we have an introduction to physical activity and exercise, and that would be for 20 minutes. And I know it's how the physical activity is from how the person is here now. So when I did this program back sort of 8 years ago, I was on crutches for a couple of years, and then I moved on to a rollator, so I couldn't step off a footpath or anything like that. I live with several different types of arthritis. So my action plan was to walk. So I opened up the doors downstairs and I did 1 lap. And then slowly and slowly, as the weeks went by, I slowly increased it and increased it and increased it. So for me, that was physical activity. For someone else, I know that they wanted to do physical activity, so they decided to go up and down the stairs a couple of more times. That is physical activity for them, and it's also safe for them to do it. And then we'll be looking at preventing falls and improving balance. We have our other stretch break. Then we have making an action plan, and then we have our closing then at the end of that. So then in week 3, we have our feedback from our action plan. So you can see the team is developing here. We look at making decisions, and these decisions could be something big or something small, but it's just to get into the practice of making these decisions. So I'm a breast cancer survivor now of 11 years. When I was doing this program, it was after doing chemo and radium. So sometimes I'd have a lot of brain fog and different things like that. And I found making decisions very overwhelming, especially when you keep sort of forgetting stuff when you get the brain fog. This is very broken down, and it tells you from step by step by step how to go about making the decisions, and you know, and then doing the pros and cons of that decision. Then, you know, looking at, okay, what way will I go? And then you go to your gut test. Is my gut telling me this is what to do? So making decisions is just brilliant, because you can leave it down, come back to it like in 2 or 3 days when, you know, your mind might be better doing it, and you just sit down and then you just continue on. And it is very simple and it's very basic, but it works like a dream. So it was brilliant, because I was going to the banks having meetings about my mortgage, because I just had bought my house, and then a year later I got diagnosed with breast cancer. So different things like that. It just gives you that little bit of control back then as well, when you feel that maybe there's no control left around for you. Then we have our stretch break, we have our pain management, we have a rotor break for 10 minutes. We look at doing an endurance exercise. And this, people will say, oh, I can't do endurance exercise. So again, it's where you are on your fitness level, on your exercise. So for someone who was going up and down the stairs, maybe an extra time during that week, that is an endurance exercise. That is looking at where you are now. So, and people sort of don't realize that. We've come across many participants that go, when I hear endurance exercise, I naturally think of the gym, people doing really good workouts and that, and then they were delighted to see that actually what they can do, tone it back to how they are, that is an endurance exercise, and they got quite felt really good about that then as well. We look at healthy eating as well. We have our stretch, and then we have making an action plan, and then we have our closing then.
And we're on to week 4. So again, and this will always be displayed at the beginning of each session. So the agenda is always shown at the very beginning, so you can see exactly what's covered in each program. So we have our feedback again, so you can see again how important action planning is. So you're feeding back to the group how you got on with your action plan during the week. And by week 4, you can really see participants starting to gain confidence in their action planning and in their ability to do things that they would actually like to do for themselves. We practice better breathing. As I mentioned before, better breathing, I found it fantastic for my symptoms of long COVID, but really it's beneficial for everybody, regardless of, if you had a lung condition or a heart condition. It can really have a calming effect on the whole nervous system. And it's something that leaders and myself and Leah, if we were on, we would demonstrate this technique, and then everybody would have a chance to practice it together. And again, this is catered for everybody's level. Somebody might, the beginner's level would be trying this technique while lying down until you were comfortable, then maybe seated. If somebody was having difficulty breathing through their nose, we'd encourage them then to breathe through their mouth. So it's really getting into the habit of that diaphragmatic belly breathing and the pursed lip breathing, combining those techniques together, which can be really helpful. Because I know when I was quite sick with COVID, I became quite anxious about my breathing. So I actually found this technique really helpful for the anxiety aspect of it, as well as the long COVID symptoms. There's a stretch break. We look at reading food labels, part 1. And this is a really, really helpful activity where you actually will bring along your food labels from home and really make sense of what is in the foods that we are consuming. So there can be a lot of eye openers in this, a lot of surprises. So it's a really helpful activity. We have a short exercise practice together. And again, as Leah highlighted, the exercise in this program, because I know some participants can be a bit nervous when they see, oh, exercise, are they going to have us, jumping around doing jumping jacks? No, we're not. It's all about meeting your body where you're at right now, and it's all catered for you. So it's all very, very gentle. We take a break, and you can see problem solving is coming up again, and that's because it really is a key tool in our self-management toolbox, one that we can use, one that I use, whether it's related to my condition or other problems we may have in day-to-day life. That's what these skills really help us with all aspects of life. And for participants, just to get really comfortable and familiar with going through those problem-solving steps, we practice it quite frequently throughout the workshop. We have another stretch break. We look at communication skills. So how do we communicate with other people? It can be very difficult with an invisible condition. It can be very difficult to communicate with family, friends, also with our healthcare team. So we look at all ways of how to really better our communication skills in order to really let people know our needs, let people know how they can help us, or also, how to turn down help graciously if it's something that we don't want to. So we cover all of that along with a lot more. And then, of course, we are making our action plan then for the week ahead, and then a very short closing. And then we move on to week 5. So again, it's we're coming near the end because it's 6 weeks. So we feedback on our action plans, how we got on. Again, looking at reading food labels part 2. So again, really making sense of the information that's on our food labels so that everybody feels comfortable and confident at the end of it. And don't worry, we certainly don't tell people what they should be eating and what they can't. We give the information, and then participants can make their own mindful decisions about what they're eating. We take a stretch break, we look at medication usage, then we have a relaxation body scan, which is one of those tools that uses the mind. And it's a lot of participants really enjoy this. And a lot of them would actually go on and make it an action plan for the following week. So it's nice that they're getting a taster of what it's like to experience it on the program, and then they can decide if this is something I'd like to do or not. And we encourage people to try something out for 2 weeks before deciding which tools you like best. We look at dealing with low mood and depression, and then communicating with ourselves. So as well as communicating with other people, this is a really, really good activity. I find it so helpful. How do we actually speak to ourselves? Because sometimes we can be very unkind to ourselves. So what am I actually saying to myself? And really challenging those, those negative thoughts, and just looking at how we can be kinder to ourselves and how we communicate. We have another stretch break, and then we make our final action plan of the program. But participants find them so valuable that it's something they go on to use long after the program has finished. And finally, a short closing.
And in week 6, we have our feedback. We are looking at making informed treatment decisions. We have our stretch. Then we'll be working with your healthcare team. We're going to be doing guided imagery, relaxation, and we're going to have our break, and then looking back and planning for the future. So we ask participants before session 6 just to have a look at what they'd like to plan in sort of 3 to 6 months time. I'm just aware of time for everyone as well. So we have our stretch break, and then we have our closing then. So what is covered each week? So it's the one that has the dots on it. So all participants would get this. So like week 1 is the overview of self-management and chronic health conditions. We have fatigue and getting a good night's sleep, using your mind to manage symptoms, and then making an action plan. So you know that if you couldn't make a session, you know what reading and what is going to be spoken about in that session. So it's really nice just to have it there in front, so you know exactly what is coming up from week to week. And I know sometimes people say, if I miss a session, can I go and join another group? And the answer there is we can't, unfortunately, no.
Okay, so what do you need for the program? Well, you need really just yourself is all you need, but it can be helpful to have a pen and paper to hand, because often you might hear suggestions that are made by other participants, or you might hear a nugget of information. So it's useful to have your pen and paper to hand that you can jot it down. The workbook, which I'm just holding up to the screen here, that's posted out to you along with inserts and that course overview handout that Leah showed in the previous slide after session 2. And any other information you need will be emailed out to you after session 0. And as it says, there's no need to print these out. But this book is really like that toolbox. This is the 5th edition of the book that participants receive, which is down to feedback from participants, from leaders, and the SMRC look at the science and have made the changes. So it's not a book that is stuck back in the 70s. It has moved with the times and with science. And we really encourage participants to keep it out somewhere, even after the program, because they're going to be dipping in and out of it. It's such a really detailed index. And I suppose just to mention briefly what I really got from this program as somebody living with long COVID. The first thing was really being in a space with other people that understood. I found before it was very isolating and a lonely place to be. So really being in that space where other people got it and understood, with just sharing one word or a look, there was just this common understanding. And as I've mentioned there, the communication helped me so much. How do I communicate what I'm going through, my needs to family, friends, also to, really get the most out of my healthcare appointments when I go, communicating more effectively. And of course, that action planning that you've heard a lot about in this information session. Action planning really helped my confidence, really allowed me to achieve, which was huge for me, because I was very much stuck in a zone of, I can't do this anymore, I'm not able to do this. So the action planning really helped me with acceptance that, yeah, I can't do certain things, but I can do them a different way. And there's still a lot of things that I can do. And breaking it down, breaking your goal down was key into those small, doable, achievable steps. And also the breathing techniques I found very, very helpful, along with using your mind to really calm down my system. So using things like distraction, the body scan, guided imagery. I was really introduced to so many tools when I did this program as a participant, and it's been absolutely life-changing for me. It's really shifted my mindset to a more positive space, and really helped me with acceptance. I'm just conscious of our time, so I think we'll move on. And this, I suppose, highlights what I was talking about. It's really building a stepping stone of self-confidence, and that was probably me down at the bottom there. You know, I won't do it. And through the program, it slowly shifted to, okay, I can't do it, but, you know, I want to do it. How do I do it? And then suddenly, you know, okay, I'm going to try to do this. I can do it. I will do it. And then the success. And this visual, it actually reminds me of action planning. You're going to be hearing action planning in your sleep tonight. It really does remind me of that, because again, you're breaking down those steps to what you can do. It might be a different way of doing things, but you still can do. So the focus for me really shifted again from, okay, I can't do it this way, but I can do it this way. And instead of looking, which I did look at, okay, I have to achieve it straight away. No, you don't. So it's important to know that it's just taking that very first step, that you don't have to see the full staircase to take the first step. To reach that successful point at the very end.
So the other Living Well programs that we run within CHO9 is Living Well with Chronic Health Conditions, and Living Well with Chronic Health Conditions for the Irish Skin Foundation members, Living Well with Chronic Health Conditions for the Long COVID cohort group, and then we have Living Well Chronic Pain Self-Management program. And we're also running that program then in partnership with Chronic Pain Ireland. And we're also running another program then in partnership with Fibromyalgia Ireland members. Then we have another chronic pain program running, and that is for the Irish EDS HSE members. We also run Building Better Caregivers, and at the moment we're working in collaboration now with the Irish Heart Foundation for their carers to attend this program. We then run Living Well, Cancer, Thriving and Surviving, and again we're working now in partnership with St. Luke's Hospital as well. We have our workplace Living Well with Chronic Health Conditions. Kathy touched on that earlier. We also then run Living Well with Chronic Health Conditions for the Irish Kidney Association. For their members, we have another one running then for the MS Ireland group. And then we also did a Living Well with Chronic Health Conditions for those living with Lyme disease as well. And it's just great, all these programs that we're able to offer within CHO9. It's really good. So some past participants' feedback on this program, and that is the Living Well with Chronic Health Conditions for Long COVID. So it's specifically from this program. So action plans have helped me control not getting overwhelmed. I never knew this was possible. I'm now talking about my condition to family and friends because this program has taught me how to do so. Thank you for believing in us and our condition. It was the first time in a long time where I was treated as a person and not a medical experiment. No one believed in long COVID at the start. We were dismissed by everyone imagining it. It was all in our heads and we were making it up. I am a nurse with over 30 years experience and it wasn't in my head. So thank you so much. I no longer feel guilty about having long COVID. Thanks to you, Leah, and this wonderful program. Bless you all. So the links that I would send out were fantastic. It was the first time in nearly 2 years where I knew I could trust the information. So at the end of every session, we send links that was covered on that session. And then I also send out additional links. And they are all from the HSE, the NHS, but also other it's also sort of very empowering for people then as well, and also from other organizations. So it has made all the difference in the world. You and your co-host provided extremely practical information in a very welcoming, encouraging and positive way. I continue to use techniques that I picked up during the session, for example, in relation to planning, meditation, healthy eating and exercise. Unfortunately, my health hasn't improved enough to return to work, but knowing others who are and were in my situation keeps me hopeful. This program should be part of the recovery from long COVID for all long COVID clinics, and they should be referred to it. All I can say is thank you. You've given me the strength and hope for a brighter future. It has given me the confidence for the first time in over 2 years. I went from my first walk in nearly 2 years thanks to your program. I was terrified to go out living with long COVID, and I know all of these participants who have put that in, and she was absolutely terrified about going out. The pace of the program was excellent. With brain fog, you forget things, but Tim and Leah repeated things back several times. I don't know how they did it, empathetically and with understanding, warmth and caring, and nothing was a problem. I think all leaders should be like this, running a program, and they got it, so thank you. I was bullied my entire life except for now, so thank you. Life isn't as scary anymore, thank you for that. It was also such a comfort being in a group of people all who had long COVID, especially because it's such a new illness. So thank you very much for organising a group specific to long COVID. Many thanks again to yourself and Kathy. You both ran the programme really well and you're always very facilitating. And I think that just sums up the whole programme as well. So.
This is a lovely image and words. I think it always strikes me every time I see it. It's that when the I is replaced with we, even illness becomes wellness. And that I always think of the I as isolation when it comes to chronic conditions, or, you know, and really coming together on this program. The isolation tends to kind of dissolve, and that you're in a room with others. It's a virtual room, but it's still a room, and you're connecting and you feel less alone. So that I really does shift to the we. And you can see that as the weeks goes on, as people get more comfortable with each other, really get to know each other and support each other. And it becomes a very supportive space. And we can see those hands up, those helping hands. And I know a lot of the times that, you know, with healthcare workers and you know, you tend to give an awful lot to other people, and those hands are kind of going outwards, really helping others, doing good. But with this program, I think we're really turning those hands back on ourselves, and giving ourselves that time each week, allowing ourselves, and it's really part of self-care too, saying this is time for me, for myself, time to learn to self-manage. So I think it's a really powerful image. And this is the poster now for this program, and it's specifically for HSE employees who are either living with long COVID or are caring for somebody who has long COVID. And this poster is going to be shared in the chat and hopefully also emailed on to you after today's session. So it goes through what we have covered today, just reminding you, because I know we've given you a lot of information today about the program in great detail. I hope it hasn't been too overwhelming, but this really kind of breaks it down as to what is this program. It's a free online program delivered for 2.5 hours over 6 weeks. And as Leah mentioned already, we have a session 0 as well, making sure that everybody is comfortable. It's delivered by 2 trained leaders, one of whom is living with long COVID. And that's really important, as Leah highlighted, that it's not just somebody speaking to you that doesn't understand. At least one of the leaders will be living with the condition similar to you, which makes it so much more relatable, that they really understand the challenges that it poses. And again, it highlights all the topics that we'll be covering over the 6 weeks. So it's actually going to, the session 0 is on Friday. It's at 2 o'clock and it's this Friday the 28th, and then it'll be starting on Monday the 7th. Monday the 7th from 7 o'clock to 9:30. So it will stay on a Monday then for the 6 weeks. It's only the session 0 that's on the Friday. After that, it'll be on the Monday.
And just to say that the lovely Kathy will be one of the co-facilitators on that program as well. So that's really great to have Kathy do that.
Thanks,
for us.
Leah.
So if you have any questions, you just contact myself, and there's my email address and my telephone number, and just to say thank you so much for attending the program today, and we hope to see you soon. And I know we're going to be doing a quick Q&A then as well.
Yeah, thanks so much, everyone.
Thanks, Leah and Kathy. That was really, really interesting and really brilliant insight into the Living Well program. So thank you so much. We don't have much time, so there was just one question that came in just before the talk began, if that's okay, if we could just touch on that. Somebody was just wondering, how can they incorporate living well into social inclusion, for example, in like a homeless service where people are living with like multiple chronic illnesses?
So at the moment, we are actively engaging with Cordia in relation to setting up the Living Well program, say for the Ukrainian and Chinese community. We've had past participants as well who are homeless, that have come sort of from, you know, like a hotel room basis. We have had some others joining us who would be in Peter McFerry services then as well. So once I'd be aware of that, we can work around ways of actually helping someone to get online, and say if they don't have access then say to a device or that, we can look at sort of being able to give them the device, say for those 7 weeks, and then and someone comes out through the Acorn devices as well. So someone comes out, shows them how to do it. And like I just recording the 2 people that were living in those accommodations, they were with family, but family sort of left, or they had their headphones on then as well, and they were able to join that way. Just on probably social inclusion as well, we're looking at engaging with Pathway Point then to explore how we can deliver the Living Well program to the travelling community then as well. And we're also then engaging with the TU in Grange, Gorman, and social inclusion in the HSE and migrant health project for self-management support. And then students then in TCU in Grange Gorman are receiving self-management support, say from a cultural perspective. But really the homelessness, that is something that we want to look into more, because we are having more participants join who are coming from those provisions then as well. And I think one of the things that as well is all the other participants, they actually don't know that. So so there's none of sort of people saying, oh, such a person is coming from say a hotel room, or they can't get in a different, so it's always done with respect then as well, so no one realizes. And I know at one of the programs, one of the leaders didn't even realize who said person was. So we'll help get people online, and like as homelessness is something that we really want to look into as well. So because we know there's so many people who are homeless who are living with different chronic health conditions and chronic pain and that, and some who've been going through say cancer treatment and that. So that's something very much on our radar and something we're going to be looking more at. But if anyone wants to email me, please feel free and we can talk more about it. But it's definitely sort of something that we are going to be looking more at.
That's brilliant. That's really excellent, Leah. Thank you so much.
No problem.
So I suppose just before we'll just leave it there if that's okay, because we're run over a little bit, so we'll let people get back to work. But before everybody does rush back to work, I'd just like to remind everybody of our final webinar of the series, which is on tomorrow at 1:30, and this is going to be the talk by Derek Pepper, and he's from Shine. So if you'd like to sign up for this talk, you can scan the QR code. It's just in front of you there. So this will be a really useful talk if anybody is interested. I'd also just like to remind you that you are going to get a link to our survey just to evaluate our talks. So it can help inform us for 2023, for our 2023 planning, so we can plan and listen to your feedback about our talks. And you're also in with a chance to win a prize. So that's it for today, everybody. I'd just like to thank everybody again. And if you can join tomorrow, just scan the QR code there on the screen. It's from 1:30 to 2:10 tomorrow. Thanks, everyone.